this video, let's talk about complex emotions and feelings because it's complicated. Our complex emotions are when we have multiple core emotions showing up at the same time, and our feelings are the impressions or the interpretations we have of the emotions that we're experiencing. A lot of times our feelings get confused with our emotions and they're not the same thing. And by understanding that they're not the same thing, we can actually be more empowered to work with them and to make better choices in our lives. Because our emotions, as I mentioned a couple videos ago in the first video, so if you haven't watched that, definitely go back and watch it. But our emotions are driven by our underlying needs, whereas our feelings are driven by our thoughts. And to a certain extent, we do control our thoughts, absolutely. But when there are emotions at play, that physiological experience in our body can sometimes prevent us from accessing our thoughts or thinking clearly. If you are in a trauma response or in a traumatized state, your nervous system is hyper aroused, you're completely overwhelmed physically, energetically in your body, it's going to be really hard to think clearly. You know, we have that brain fog, we have that scattered brain. And so the first step is always to connect with the body, always to regulate the body. And the easiest way to do this that I like to suggest is to just count backwards from 60 to 1 and notice whatever sensations are in your body. And if you find any discomfort anywhere, just move with that discomfort and just keep counting until you get to 1. And you'll find that you have regulated yourself enough to just really look at and observe, okay, what am I feeling and what do I need? But we'll talk about that more in the next episode. In this episode, I just want to help you understand what a complex emotion is and what a feeling is. So common complex emotions that we have: anxiety, frustration, disappointment, grief, resentment. So there's a lot of more nuanced emotions. These are what I call complex emotions. Why complex? Not because they're actually that complex, but it can feel complex when we don't understand what sensation we're having. If I ask you, what are you feeling? It's a lot of, I don't know, or it's overwhelmed, which is a feeling, or anxious, which is a feeling. So when we are looking at identifying what emotions we're experiencing, it can help to work backwards from what we're feeling. And what we're feeling is just the description of the experience of the state that we're in. So if we take anxiety, for example, and I say that I'm feeling really anxious, this typically means that I feel scattered, I feel stressed, I feel fear in a way. I might also feel shame or guilt in a way that I'm trying to avoid. And so all these combinations of emotions that I'm not processing, that I'm not working with, that I'm not clear on, is creating this buildup of energy in my body that we describe as anxiety, that our brain is like, this is anxiety, right? And a lot of people for many, many years didn't even use anxiety. They didn't really realize that that was what was happening, right? So this is kind of a more recent term that we use. But it is important to understand, okay, the feeling that I'm having, my understanding of what I'm feeling is anxiety. And underneath that, unpacking what are the actual emotions, like the core emotions, like I talked about in my last video, what are the actual core emotions that I'm experiencing, and breaking it down in that way. Now, again, this can't be done until you're regulated. So we're not going to be able to really think about things and see things clearly until we've calmed our body down. So there's a lot of somatic work that we do to do that first. But when we begin to become little detectives and investigate what's really going on within us, it's about saying, okay, what are the thoughts that I'm having? What are the behaviors that I'm engaging in? And becoming clear on the clues. I like to call it clue hunting, right? Like you become a detective of yourself, you become more aware, and the more self-awareness you gain, the more information and data you have to actually take action, take aligned action. So part of these clues is our subconscious is always looking to get our needs met. We're not always intentional. We're usually not intentionally trying to get our needs met because we're not familiar with what they are. And our emotions are signals that we have these needs. So what happens when our emotions signals to our body is a mind of its own, literally. It's our subconscious and our unconscious is housed within our bodies. So when an emotion arises, when that energy arises, our body knows, okay, this is a signal that I have an underlying need. And subconsciously, we start to create stories because our stories or our thoughts or our beliefs lead to our actions. So if we know we need to get a need met, we start to act out in ways to get that need met. And if we're not intentional about it, we start to act out in ways that can kind of be maladaptive. They serve us in one sense, but in a long-term sense, they might not serve us. So what do I mean by this? All of us have an underlying need for connection, for validation, both external and internal. There's nothing wrong with external validation. It's a very normal, natural human need. We literally have mirror neurons, right? So we need external validation. Now, if you're a child and your caregiver doesn't give you any attention, kind of dismisses and neglects you, you're going to have the emotions that signal to your body that you have this unmet need. And then what's going to happen is subconsciously, you're going to begin to use the data you've collected to create a thought. Our thoughts are created from subconscious information, and our subconscious is constantly gathering information. So anything we see, anything we hear, anything we experience ends up as data points in our subconscious, and that is what we use to create thoughts. And beliefs are thoughts that we agree to, right? So we can have many, many thoughts passing all day. We have thousands of thoughts a day, but the thoughts that we go, yes, those become beliefs, and that drives our behavior, right? So our feelings are our impression of the experience we're having that's made up of our thoughts and beliefs that drives our actions. So if I have a need for external validation that I'm not getting from my caregiver, which is supposed to be, the healthy way, then subconsciously I'm going to start thinking, well, how can I, because our minds are amazing problem-solving computers, how can I get attention? And so sometimes we're going to act badly and try to get attention that way. Sometimes we're going to look for people who seem to have a lot of attention and want to follow along with them or get their attention and change ourselves in some way. This is where people pleasing is typically born, right? How can I subconsciously get this need for love and attention met? Well, our brain creates all these different scenarios that will lead us to act in ways to get that need met. Now, the trouble is that because we're not aware that that is happening, we are unconsciously moving through our lives and we're not getting the results that we ultimately want, because we might get that attention for a short period of time, but over the long run, we're also depriving ourselves of other needs, like being true to who we are and being free and being safe to be ourselves. So it's important that as adults with agency and the ability to access our different levels of mind, like as adults, we can access our conscious mind, our subconscious mind, and our unconscious mind through practice, through deliberate effort. So as an adult, it's so important that we recognize the feeling state that we're in, the emotions that are arising, and identify the need that is ultimately seeking to get served, so that we can choose healthier ways of getting that need for attention met. Rather than just people pleasing or acting out, we can find safe sources of that external validation. Friends, relatives, loved ones, anyone who in our community that we know we can trust to give us that attention, but also give us that attention for us being ourselves and for us being authentic. And in that way, getting multiple needs met at once. I hope that wasn't too complicated for you. What I really want you to take away from this lesson is that complex emotions are when multiple core emotions are at play at once, meaning there's multiple underlying core needs that aren't getting met, that are trying to get met. Feeling states are just interpretations of how we're feeling. They're interpretations of the experience that we're having. It's our mind trying to make sense of things. Our needs are what drive our emotions. Our thoughts are what create our beliefs and our feelings. And our beliefs and our feelings create our actions. So when we're trying to uncover what we're feeling, what's going on, what's the need, we need to kind of become detectives and begin to look for the clues. What behavior am I engaging in? Am I engaging in attention-seeking behavior? Am I engaging in self-soothing behavior? Okay, maybe there's sadness there, and then what is the underlying need that this sadness is signaling for me? Am I engaging in really sheltering myself kind of behavior, isolating, withdrawing, hiding? Okay, what is the safety need that isn't being met? This fear that's showing up to try to help me to make a decision, take an action, rather than avoid, right? When we're not working with our fear, we tend to avoid, but when we are working with it, we start to make deliberate decisions and take action. So it's so important to understand all of this. And if this was very confusing for you, then the next video that I'm going to be talking about, where I break down the Mighty Emotions method that I've created, is very, very simple, 4 steps to help you begin to work with your emotions, become more grounded, nurture yourself, take care of yourself, and get your needs met. So I'll see you in that video.